Hi everyone, it's Miss Brenner. Today we are going to be going over Dystopian Society's Notes Part 3. We're going to be diving in a little bit deeper into the writing process behind the novel Brave New World and the author that created it. So let's talk a little bit about Audax Huxley, who was born on July 28th, 1894 in Surrey, England. His grandfather was a famous biologist, and his mother had a very vibrant family tree rooted in famous novelists, poets, and educators. So Huxley had a great background to be able to write this novel grounded in science fiction. Unfortunately, his mother died of cancer when he was 14 years old, and he said it helped him to better understand how quickly human happiness changes and how there are a lot of ups and downs in life that you might not expect at a young age. Unfortunately for Huxley, he wanted to be a doctor at a young age, but then he went blind at 16, and so he wasn't able to complete that dream. He attended Oxford University and graduated with honors, and he died on the same day as JFK, which I think is kind of strange, which is November 22nd, 1963. Now, he traveled to the United States in 1926, which people believe is a lot of where he got his ideas for his novel Brave New World, which he wrote in 4 months during 1931. And after it was published, it was extremely criticized for several different reasons. Particularly, it was criticized by H.G. Wells, who is the author of War of the Worlds, if you've ever read that book. Audax Huxley has no right to betray the future as he did in that book, which was the statement of H.G. Wells, who was extremely disappointed with Brave New World. George Orwell was actually the mentor for Audax Huxley, who George Orwell wrote Animal Farm in 1984, and he said this book probably casts no light on the future whatsoever. Gerald Bullitt was an essayist, and he says, as a prophecy, it is merely fantasy. There's nothing special about this novel. And Whitton Lewis, who was an author at that time, said an unforgivable offense to progress. Now, a lot of people felt that this novel was a betrayal of the human mind, and it made a lot of terrible assumptions about the morality of human beings and how the progress of the future was going to be more negative than positive. Now, with that being said, this book was inspired by several different events that were happening at the time or in the history prior. So in 1879, the first psychology laboratory opened in Germany, and in 1886, Sigmund Freud argued that awareness of the unconscious mind is essential to understanding conscious thought and behavior. Now, all of these different scientific studies led to genealogic growth, which brings us to the eugenics movement. Eugenics is a highly controversial socially philosophical argument that human race could be improved through the promotion of higher reproduction of people with desired traits and reduced reproduction of people with less desired and or undesirable traits. Now, this was put into progress by different diplomats in Germany during World War II. You may know it as the Nazi movement, where they decided they were going to exterminate a large portion of the Jewish population as they labeled them less desirable, and they didn't want them to reproduce since they had, as they would claim, less desirable traits, and so they were going to create a master race. Now, not at the same time, but in the future, Henry Ford created the Model T car, which also led to the inspiration of Brave New World, our novel. In 1908, the first Model T car is produced, and Henry Ford develops this assembly line process, which makes the car far more affordable than it was in the past. Factories can make cars easier and more affordable for the average family. Henry Ford has got our hero-like status in our story because he's created this process that speeds everything up. He's not a character, just so you're aware, but he is pretty much their deity. The setting of the novel is 2540 AD. This is referred to in the novel as 632 years AF, which is after Ford, which is meaning 632 years after the production of the first Model T car. Now, all that might sound strange at this time, but these are two different influential pieces in history that shaped the purpose of our novel. Another piece of scientific history that shaped the novel is Pavlov's dog and the classic conditioning theory, that if you condition a species to have a response for something that they naturally have a response for, you can then trigger them to have that preferred response without the natural expectation. So with the dog, it's the food, and the dog salivates, and if you train them to expect a bell when they see the food, and then you just ring the bell without the food, they will still salivate expecting the thing that usually causes that reaction. This book also has a lot of different things as far as predicting the future that the critics said would never happen. However, we see that now, several years later, that it somewhat has. There are advances in technology and internet, TV, cell phones, and video games that were all predicted in this novel that hadn't occurred at the time. Consumerism is a huge part of the novel that was predicted, where things of commercialized need and material want have surpassed regular moral expectation. Promiscuity is no longer shocking. Seeing things on TV that were considered inappropriate and not family friendly back when the novel was written are no longer shocking that we see on TV. Cloning and stem cell research is pretty normal for us at this point. We have heard of sheep being cloned and other animals being used for stem cell research, and it's no longer surprising when somebody can use a 3D printer to print some organs for somebody. Or overly prescribed and overused medications. We oftentimes feel like there should be a magical pill to help us lose weight, or a magical medication to try and fix our anxieties, and we overprescribe nowadays. Now, these are all different predictions that were made in the book that weren't occurring at the time it was written. So this book make you wonder a couple different things. Is it better to be free than to be happy? Is a serious consideration to take when reading this novel. Is society more important than being an individual? Is it more important to be a moving part in this machine that we call our world? Can children be taught effectively to think in only one certain way? Can we precondition them? Can young people be taught so well that they never question their teachings later? Is stability more important than freedom? Can alterations made by advanced science to mankind be made permanent on the DNA level? Can mankind be conditioned by science? Which different theories point to yes. Should individual people be limited/controlled for the greater good of society? If so, how could we control, and how should the government do so? How much does advertising influence our desires and choices? Is having what you want all the time exactly when you want it really a healthy thing? What makes adults different from babies? All different things to consider. Now that we have the basics of what forced this novel into existence and some of the different things that it might provoke in your experience while you're reading, let's talk about some key terms that you're going to need to know to understand the story. So as said before, AF stands for after Ford. So when they refer to things in history, they're going to say a certain number of years AF. So just so you're aware, Henry Ford is considered their highest power, like a deity, and therefore everything is referred to when he invented the Model T car. The caste system for this book, there is a way that humans are divvied up to be valued, and it goes in this 5-tier caste system, with alphas being the highest, then betas, gammas, deltas, and epsilons being the lowest caste system. Bottling. So the embryos and babies are grown in bottles for 9 months rather than in a womb. You'll hear more about that in the story as you listen to it. but they talk about the bottle that the child came in as it would be considered a womb in the story. So a Bakanovsky group is a group of identical twins created by dividing a single egg many times. But this process is only used for gammas, deltas, and epsilons. This might sound strange at this point in time, but I promise you, as you listen to the novel, it'll explain how the groups are made and why it's only used for these lower caste systems. Decanting room is the room where they remove the embryos from the bottles because they've outgrown the bottles, so kind of like birth, it's like a birthing room. The pod snap technique is a way of ripening the eggs or the ovaries at once so that thousands of siblings can be made within a 2-year period. This allows them to speed up the number of humans being produced on their weird Henry Ford style assembly line. A free marten is a female embryo who is created to not be fertile. So some of the humans that they're producing on the assembly line, they specifically produce making sure that they are not fertile and therefore cannot reproduce. They'll explain that in the novel as well. And then lastly, I just want to go back over so that way we're all fully aware. These are our different caste systems, alphas being the most powerful and the most intelligent, then betas, gammas, deltas, and then epsilons being forcefully made the least intelligent and handicapped in several different ways. Alrighty, so those are all of our terms for part 3. I hope that you guys have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you all later. Bye.